Moving on, let's keep it in the NCAA, but switch over to men's basketball and talk about everything going on at Alabama, particularly with their coach, Nate Oats. For that, we have a very special guest, so hang tight. All right, so as I said, we have a special guest with us today, the official Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silver's collegiate athletics expert, Brett Gosnell. Brought him in to talk about Nate Oats, coach for the Alabama men's basketball team. So Alabama has had an incredible season on the court, getting as high as number 1. They're now currently ranked number 2. Last night, they just beat our South Carolina Gamecocks in overtime, led by 41 points from star freshman Brandon Miller, a projected top 5 pick. Off the court, not as great of a season. In January, they had a player arrested and obviously kicked off the team, charged with murder for his involvement in an incident that led to the death of a young woman there in Alabama. Then it came out that the gun used in that crime was brought to the scene. It was the gun of the kid who was arrested and charged with murder, Darius Miles. His friend, Michael Davis, did the shooting. The gun was brought there by that star freshman, Brandon Miller. Wanted to bring Brett in on this, tell us a little bit about what he knows, what he's read about the case, and discuss how Nate Oats, in my opinion, blew it with his press conference comments the other day. Brett, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, let's talk about Nate Oats. The Brandon Miller involvement, no one knew about this until there was a hearing the other day. It came out. Nate was obviously asked about it, and he said, quote, "We knew about that. Can't control everything everybody does outside of practice. Nobody knew that was going to happen. College kids are out. Brandon hasn't been in any type of trouble, nor is he in any type of trouble in this case, just in the wrong spot at the wrong time." What were your initial thoughts when you heard Nate's quote here?
So it sounds like he's minimizing it for sure. But the position of the school, the team, the university is that the kid didn't do anything wrong. They're making that very clear at this point. And, his statement was, like I said, minimizing it, perhaps insensitive, but it was essentially sticking to the party line of this kid didn't do anything wrong, which I don't know everything about what happened. I guess not many people do, but from what I've read, that's probably right. At least legally. I mean, if the police didn't even bring any charges.
And the DA has said that he's not going to be charged.
Yeah. So legally, the kid did nothing wrong. I mean, Nate Oats could have talked about it a lot more artfully, I guess, given that a life was lost here tragically. But he's sticking to the line of the kid did nothing wrong, and that is probably the correct assessment.
So I guess one of the big questions I have in my mind is, he clearly says he knew about it. I'm guessing he knew about it fairly soon after the murder happened. So why not, if Miller is completely innocent, as the DA says, there's no crime being charged here, why not come out as early as possible and address this versus letting the media find out and then answering it like a jackass at this press conference?
Yeah, that's just him being naive, I guess, to think that. Did he think nobody was going to find out about it? I don't know how you can think that.
I don't know, because clearly it's going to come out. I mean, there's, if not a trial, there's all kind of pre-trial stuff where evidence is going to come out. So I don't understand what he's thinking by, oh yeah, we knew about that. We didn't tell y'all, but we knew about it. He's innocent. Just take my word for it. I'm certainly not protecting my star freshman here.
I wonder if he could have talked about, we had it, or maybe he did. We had another player involved in this, and not name him. I mean, he is going to be named at some point, but maybe you look better if you say, hey, we did have another player involved in this. There's certainly an argument to be made that they should have suspended him at that point as they investigate. You hear that a lot, like, with domestic violence stuff in the NFL, for instance. It feels like they'll suspend a player as they investigate the situation.
Yes.
And I don't know if that feels like optics most of the time. And if they suspended Brandon Miller, that's all it would be at this point too. But again, it all comes down to he could have talked about this a lot. Nate Oats could have talked about this a lot better, but
yeah. And that's the outcry on social media, obviously, is suspend him. What do you think about Bama not suspending him?
So without even getting into the rightness or wrongness of it, doing so would simply be giving in to the media narrative, the public outcry, the public pressure of social media, all that. Because most of the outcry, it seems like people haven't read anything about the case. I think most people think he knew what the guy was going to do when he brought the gun to the scene, and he willingly brought the gun there to be used to kill somebody, and that's just not what happened at all. And to make a larger societal point, we see this all the time now. Like, news travels so fast. Everybody has a voice on social media now. Hot takes abound, and there's just public pressure about everything, and that's really what's happening here. It's such a tragic event, God knows, but like this, it seems Brandon Miller really, like you said, wrong place, wrong time, didn't know what he was doing, and there's just all this outcry to suspend him, and to give in to if you suspended him, it would seem that you're just simply giving in to the outcry for the sake of giving into it. You're not doing what's right.
Do you think, me being cynical, I wonder, would he have suspended him even just for optics if he wasn't as good of a player as he is? Like, how much do you think? It's hard to say. Obviously, you're not Nate Oats, thank God. But yeah. Do you think that played any role in him not being suspended?
Yeah, I hadn't really honestly thought about that. But yeah, I think it could, because at this point, it seems like the easy way out for Bama is to suspend the guy, right? If he's your 13th man off the bench, then, that's probably what they're going to do, So yeah, that's a good point. But still, that would be just taking the easy way out and giving in, like what they're doing now. They're, at least it seems like they're, and I'm looking at it in the opposite of cynical. I'm looking at the most favorable out to Bama. It seems like they really believe the kid did nothing wrong, and they're trying to do the right thing.
And I wonder too, because I don't know how much you knew about the situation when Miles was initially arrested, but I know they listed him out for the upcoming game after the incident happened with an ankle injury.
Oh, no, I didn't know anything.
And then they were like, okay, well, he's off the team, and he's off the team because he was involved in a murder. So knowing that now, yeah. Are you as eager to give them the benefit of the doubt? And also, another Nate Oats thing. Did you hear who he brought in to talk to the team after all this went down?
No.
Ray Lewis.
On this subject?
On this subject.
Oh, my God.
So, I don't want to make light of this. We're not making light of the situation, but can you, I feel like Nate Oats has handled this in the worst possible way each step of the way.
Yeah, that's crazy. So Ray Lewis back in the day, did he actually do the stabbing?
I think that he just allegedly helped with the cover up, but he was charged with the murder initially.
Well, I mean, that is a apt person to bring in.
That's true. Yeah.
That's like if you commit welfare fraud, bringing in Brett Favre to do the.
Yeah, and it's just, like Nate Oats is a guy who the biggest program he ever coached at before Bama was Buffalo.
Yeah.
And we talked about it some with Lamont Paris, how he's had some issues with Gigi Jackson, probably because this is the best player he's ever had to coach. And so not a lot of 5-star recruits coming through Chattanooga. I wonder how much of that small school mentality is at play here with Nate Oats handling this, if he's not just in over his head. And that's why he looks so stupid the entire way.
That's an excellent point, because like the SEC is just a whole different monster. Like, I mean, these kids are professional athletes. Most of, like South Carolina's an exception, being in Columbia, but most of these schools are in small towns. Like these kids are celebrities. I mean, yeah, like that element he's certainly never had to deal with before. The whole idea of there being media interest in the team like this, I assume he's never dealt with that at Buffalo. So yeah, that's true.
That's part of why his statement was probably so terrible, because I know they've got a communications person, because they had to release a statement afterwards apologizing for his statement. So someone works there in Tuscaloosa, and I get like each step of his quote I found super interesting. Like we just covered, we knew about that and the issues I have with that, and then the next sentence, can't control everything everybody does outside of practice. When have you heard a college coach admit such a thing?
I mean, that statement is one of those things where he's technically correct about everything he said. You can't control some, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it was minimizing it and it was insensitive. No question about that. He has, I'm not disputing, he has done terribly at every step of this. And I didn't even know about the Ray Lewis shit. That is wild as hell.
That's not even like, that's something you would write if you were writing like an SNL skit.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I mean, I just keep going back to the idea that there's, you like, again, you see it in so many things in society now. There's a business does something, or a sports team does something, and there's a huge public outcry. There's all this pressure. And most of the time, the entity just kind of gives in and gives the mob what they want, But Bama is not doing that. And whether you think that's right or wrong, I mean, it's unique to see them stand up. I heard a comment today that like somebody said Bama was being spineless for not suspending their best player, and that's the opposite of what they're being. Like you can say they're slimy or immoral or whatever, but they're not being damn spineless. The easy thing to do would be to suspend the kid and give in to all the pressure. But now let me ask you, what if they did that? Let's say they had suspended him like for the game against us last night. What do you think the public reaction would be?
Well, I guess this happened with a much less important incident with, we were talking about him last night, Grayson Allen.
Mm-hmm.
So Grayson Allen tripped everyone he ever met on a basketball court on purpose.
Yeah.
And people were like, this guy's got to get a grip. And Coach K suspended him indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
And indefinitely turned out to be like one game against a weak Georgia Tech team, and then they brought him back.
Yeah.
So if you do suspend him, I don't think there's like a precedent or a number that's going to satisfy everybody who wants him suspended.
That's the exact point I was trying to make. And nothing you do is going to satisfy the mob online, the public pressure. You know, if you suspend him for 10 games, nobody's going to be satisfied here. They've already made their minds up that the kid's a murderer. Because if they hadn't already made up their minds up, they would know that if they actually read the facts of the case, they would know the kid really, you know, is not being charged, has nothing to be charged for. But nothing that Bama does, I don't think, as far as suspending the kid, I don't think there's anything they can do to like satisfy the public outcry. So it comes down to making the decision like what you think is right or wrong. Because on the flip side of that, like all the media, all the talking heads, Colin Cowherd was involved, Clay Travis has had a lot to say about it.
I bet.
Yeah. Yeah. So all the public pressure here, there's no consequences to bucking them. You know, like they can scream all they want to, like the kid played last night and beat our ass. I mean, you know, there's no consequences that the public can bring. The only people that can bring some consequences are the law. They're not going to do it. And the NCAA, I guess, they're not going to fucking do it. If you stand up to the North Carolina demonstrated, if you stand up to the NCAA, you know,
they have no real power.
Right. So it really comes down to what you as an institution think is right or wrong. And clearly Bama thinks the kid didn't do anything wrong. And, you know, from what I know, I would tend to agree with that.
I guess one thought that I had, even knowing that a suspension would not satisfy everybody, was would it be better for Brandon Miller if they had come out, gotten in front of this, done the suspension for at least the optics, and also as like a
investigation played out.
Yeah, and just even to kind of hammer home, not even just for optics, but to hammer home like, okay, you're about to be a top 5 pick. You have to learn how to be more situationally aware of who is around you. Because I was reading his lawyer's statement that Miles texted him to bring the gun to him. Mm-hmm. And so, first of all, if someone has a gun in my car, I'm trying to get it out of my car. Like, I completely understand. I don't want your gun in my car. I will bring you your gun. But then, like, man, if someone's texting me at 1 a.m. or whatever to bring a gun, I have to be a little bit smarter than that. I can't, like, should he have known a murder was going to be committed? No. No. Should he have had like some spidey senses tingling that, like, damn, I know he's been out of the club. Maybe he's been drinking. I don't know. Does he need the gun right now as badly as I want it out of my car? And because I can't think of a time I've gone out with someone who I knew carried guns and I was like, I'm going to go out in public with this person and let them into my car as well. So just the lesson to teach him, like, look, you have a lot to lose, even if you didn't, but you have a lot to lose. Take some time off, recognize that, okay, I got to be a little bit smarter so that I don't turn into damn John Morant shooting lasers at people, and take this time off and think about that. And it will at least kind of blunt some of that outcry as well, possibly.
Yeah. So first of all, I would say the bet. So I guess let me make sure I've got the timeline right here. So when exactly do we think that Nate Oats found out about Brandon Miller being involved with the shooting,
I would think,
how it goes.
as best as I can tell, and I haven't seen an exact date from anybody, but I think it had to be around the time Miles got arrested, because another thing that's come out is that Miller has been super cooperative with the police in giving him his own dash cam footage.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is how I think the charges got brought against Miles and Davis, who I believe are trying to claim self-defense.
Okay. So the best possible way this could have been handled is if they would have suspended, and I think there was more than just Brandon Miller at this event. I think there was other teammates. If they could have suspended every player that was even present within a half-mile radius of this thing, if they could have suspended them all and said, these players, we're not saying they did anything wrong, but we're suspending them as the investigation plays out because we take this seriously. A life was lost. We're taking this very seriously. And then once the DA announces that Brandon Miller is cleared of all charges and that he will not be charged, then you unsuspend him. That's like the perfect catalyst for saying he can play.
I think that's the correct, yeah.
So, I think that would have been the best way to handle this. And I don't know, I don't know exactly when Nate Oats found out about this. I don't know if there was enough time to have all that happen in that way, but that would have been ideal. So now you've got me thinking about the moral rightness or wrongness of what Brandon Miller did and what I would have done. I grew up with guns and cars all the time. It wasn't that big of a deal. And if it's just kind of, it's there for self-defense. And if, my grandma famously always kept a pistol in her glove box. If my grandma texted me at 1 a.m,
yeah,
bring the heater, Brett. I'm going to do it because I'm thinking she's in trouble.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe if I was a first round pick, maybe I should behave better. But I don't know. One, it's somebody else's personal property. One, you might think the guy's in trouble because presumably that's why he would have a gun to begin with. And, maybe you shouldn't put yourself in situations where you need a gun. That's a whole other thing. But we're a Second Amendment country. You can protect yourself with a firearm.
Particularly in Alabama.
Right. So I don't know. I don't think it's beyond the pale that certainly legally we know the kid did nothing wrong, but I don't think it's beyond the pale morally that, hey, you've got my gun. Will you bring it over? And then you bring the gun. I don't know. I don't think that's beyond the pale.
And what we're doing is we're playing the result. A young woman who had nothing to do with anything, she was just minding her business and got caught up in a shootout. She's lost her life. And if that doesn't happen, we never know Brandon Miller does this. We never, it doesn't matter. It's just like what you were saying. But now that has happened, I think that sometimes you do have to play the result. So I would at least want him, and I'm sure, I would hope he would have learned it now. But now you have to know, all right, I don't care how badly you need this gun. I got to at least ask some follow-up questions. I can't just show up with a gun and then, because they said that when he showed up, Miles got the gun out the car, handed it to Davis, and the shooting started almost immediately. And I know Miller's windshield got shot out or something too. Yeah, I would have been shitting everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And I don't know where Brandon Miller's from and how he grew up and stuff. I don't know if there could be any range of, he's a true freshman. He's scared to death that a gun was even put in his car in the first place. Are you going to stand up to the guy and say, no, get that gun out of here? You're a true freshman. I mean, you know the dynamics of all that,
Because culturally, I didn't grow up with around a bunch of people who had guns, and certainly as a freshman in college, I would have been like terrified. I would not have known what to do. I would just been like, just get your gun, here you go.
Yeah. And like I know people have got in my car with a gun, and I don't think anything of it. So, I don't know. Like there's that whole dynamic of, like you say, we're hindsight's 2020 and all that. But like, again, I don't think the kid did anything egregiously terrible here. And something I read today that we've not mentioned that we should. Apparently, he was already on the way to pick Miles. Yeah, he was already on the way back to pick him up. So it wasn't as though he received a text saying, "Hey, bring me the gun," and then he drove there. Apparently, that text came while he was already
on the way.
So that's a whole other thing. He was going there anyway. So,
just a tough situation. But yeah, I think Nate Oats, that press conference was like textbook. The whole way he's handled this has been textbook in how not to handle this situation. Hopefully we're all right. Miller is innocent and he learns and takes something away from this. And certainly thoughts and prayers to the young woman's family. And I appreciate you joining me to talk about this, and hang on right there. We have one more segment left.